Gamar Tov, everybody. So this is not a sermon about Israel or about the Israeli government or about Hamas or about Hezbollah. This is a sermon about us, about how we think and how we talk and how we relate to all of the horrible things that we, the Jewish people, and that others throughout the world have suffered this past year. I'm naming this sermon Particularism and Universalism. We are all God's children. And it is about two core principles in Judaism: how we respond to the pain of our fellow Jews and how we respond to the pain of humanity. Whatever you think about on this topic, I'm hoping you will join me on this sermon journey. Please stick with me. Even if you disagree, please stick with me, because we are going to cover a lot of ground this evening. Before this past summer, I never felt I wanted to wear a Jewish star necklace. Since I'm a rabbi, my Jewish commitment is pretty clear, and it always seems sort of corny for me to have a religious identity hanging around my neck. I used to say that a rabbi wearing a Magen David was kind of like overkill. But this year, that all changed, and I wanted a star. I bought my Magen David on the street of Tel Aviv the morning after the Houthi drone bombing this past summer. I was just down the street from it. I'm not sure who really notices my star. It's small, it's gold, but I notice it. I feel it, I move it through my fingers, and I like having it close to me. I spoke about the horrors of October 7th and the increase in anti-Semitism and how that's impacted us on Rosh Hashanah. Those terrible realities led me to wear my star. The decision was born from terror and hate, but my star is not a star of Jewish oppression. It's a star of Jewish pride, a star of Jewish belonging, a star of Jewish peoplehood. When Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan taught at the Jewish Theological Seminary in the mid-20th century, he began writing his philosophy on the identity and theology of the Jewish people. His books became the foundation of the Reconstructionist movement, but Rabbi Kaplan actually had no desire to start a new rabbinical school. He saw his philosophy clearly anchored within the conservative movement, and many conservative rabbis today still assert that his ideas inspired us to become Jewish leaders. Rabbi Kaplan said that there are three main pillars of Jewish identity: belonging, behaving, and believing. Belonging, he asserted, is the most central. First and foremost, we are a people. We are a people that is part of an evolving Jewish civilization. We are a people with a culture, with a religion, with a history, with a language, and with a connection to a land. We are a big Jewish family that does not always agree with each other, but feels rooted and connected in relationships that we have, and the civilization, the Jewish civilization, that we continue to build together. After belonging, Rabbi Kaplan emphasized behaving. Once we establish that we are a member of the tribe, we have to act like we are a member of the tribe. So going to shul, making kiddush on Shabbat, having a Passover Seder, all acts of behaving like a Jew, acts of being a Jew. And then finally, once we have belonging and behaving, we have belief. Yes, faith is a component of who we are, but it's actually not the central component. We Jews do not agree about what faith means. We all practice behavior like reading from the Torah, but some of us believe that Torah came directly from God on Mount Sinai, and some of us believe that Torah was written by multiple human beings. Some of us believe in a personal God, some of us believe in a God that is within nature, and some of us don't believe in a God at all. I like to say that you can be Jewish as long as you believe in one or fewer gods. So according to Kaplan, belief is part of who we are, but it isn't the foundation. Neither is our religious practice. The first pillar of Judaism is actually peoplehood. It doesn't make any sense to think about what we Jews believe or what we Jews are doing if we don't first consider who we are and what we are when we're together. When I was in Tel Aviv on that Friday, determined to buy the perfect little gold star, I was thinking about Jewish belonging. I was thinking about having something physical to represent the people that I am a part of, a people that lives throughout the world, rooted in the sacred indigenous epicenter of Jerusalem, while creating vibrant, living communities of holiness in every single space in which we dwell. A people that is complex and even argumentative, a dysfunctional family at times, but still always a family. Jewish peoplehood means that I feel a sacred connection to Jews who live in America and across the sea. Jews living in New York City and in London and in Melbourne and in Tel Aviv. Jews living under the thumb of the Ayatollah in Iran and Jews living in war zones in Ukraine. Jews who walked great distances in Ethiopia to board planes destined for Israel, and Jews who my family helped to escape the former Soviet Union in the 1970s. I feel physically nauseous imagining Jews in death camps, as if I were there myself in a previous life. And I feel physically shaken picturing Jews in safe rooms in Kibbutz Kfar Aza, where I visited this past summer. Being part of this people means that when I found out that Hirsch, Zichrono Livracha, was murdered while I was at a Rodef Shalom bat mitzvah party, I sat in the corner and wept. I sat in the corner and wept along with another Rodef Shalom community member. We wept together for a man that we didn't know, but who I feel is a part of my extended tribe, my family. For some of us, being part of the Jewish people has meant advocating for the visibility of Jewish suffering this year, because we feel that if we do not do it, nobody else will. Rabbi Yehuda in the Talmud says, Kol Yisrael aravim zeh b'zeh, teaching us that Jews are all responsible for each other. The concept of Jewish peoplehood demands that we feel our fellow Jewish people's pain, that we feel our brothers and sisters who are Jewish, their pain, with a period at the end of that sentence. We feel their pain without qualification. This is a distinctive familial pain that is a bit difficult to explain, but I'm going to try tonight. When my family member dies, I will experience that death as a unique pain, different from how I experience the death of your family member. And when your family member dies, you will experience that death as a unique pain, different from how you experience the death of my family member. Both lives have equal value. All innocent lives have equal value. Of course, that's true. That should not even need to be stated. But we experience the pain differently because of our relationships. That is a normal human response. It is a normal human response for us to experience Jewish losses in the past and in the present as distinct and personal. That in and of itself must be able to stand alone without stipulation and without guilt. And yet, if we stop there, Torah tells us that we are missing the mark. How can we not feel the pain that comes with an innocent person's suffering? The narrative of our particular story tells us that we must feel people's pain with urgency because we were slaves in the land of Egypt, because we know what it feels like to suffer. We know what it means to be frightened, and we know what it means to be hungry. Our narrative insists that we must not turn away and that we must care because we are living, breathing people, and so are they, living, breathing people. Rabbi Hillel teaches, Im eina nili mili, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? I must stand up for myself. After October 7th, I understood that line deeply, and I understood it differently also than I had before. Myself no longer meant just me. Myself meant our Jewish community, our people. Uksha'ani la'atzmi ma'ani. But if I am only for myself, who am I? This is the line that inspired my connection to Judaism as a teenager. If I am only concerned with my own welfare and not the welfare of others, what kind of a person am I? I am not the person I want to be or the person that Judaism demands me to be if I do not feel heartsick when I see Palestinian children living for months and months in tents, walking long distance for water and for bathrooms. I am not the person that I am called to be if I do not feel horrified to know that people in Gaza are undergoing surgeries without anesthesia. Or when I saw a Palestinian man losing his wife and his baby twins just days after their birth in a bombing. I am not the person who I am called to be as a Jew if I do not feel rage when I read about women and girls in Afghanistan who no longer are able to speak out loud in public. I am not the person who I am meant to be if I don't see Venezuelan families who have traveled many, many miles in dangerous circumstances to arrive at our southern border as so similar to my own great-grandparents. People yearning deep within them for a better life. So my reading of Hillel is that we Jews, must stand up for other Jews. We must. But not only that, we must also stand up for all people. You must love the stranger, our Torah tells us. Does this mean that we should love the stranger at the expense of our own sibling? No, we are not even allowed to do that. But we must love the stranger. My heart might naturally break for my fellow Jews and Israelis in crisis, but Judaism asserts that my heart is indeed big enough to also break for innocent people across the border in Gaza. Judaism insists that my heart is open to the pain of all innocent human beings who were created in God's image. Just look at our Torah readings for these holidays, and that will help us to understand this, I think, more deeply. On the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we sat in shul and we read about Ishmael, the father of the Muslim people, sent out by his father Abraham. We listened as Ishmael and his mother Hagar sat in the desert, thirsty and hungry and weeping. And if we really took in that story, our hearts hurt. And then on the second day, we watched as Abraham almost sacrificed his son Isaac, the father of the Jewish people. As Isaac approached the mountain, we heard him question his dad. Abba, where is the ram for the sacrifice? And once again, if we really took in the fear and confusion of that child, our hearts hurt. In each story, an angel appeared to save the boys, to assure us that there would be a thriving future for both the children of Ishmael and the children of Isaac. Tomorrow afternoon, we will read a third story, the book of Jonah. This story depicts the non-Jewish people of Nineveh. They have gone terribly astray with their actions. God threatens to destroy them, but then they begin to right their wrongs and they change their ways. And God immediately forgives them. Jonah feels so confused. Why does God have compassion for these people, he asks. He's annoyed. But God scolds him. God scolds Jonah for his lack of compassion. There is a vital message in all three of these stories that we read on these holy of holy days. God loves all human beings. We are all God's children. Rabbi Daniel Hartman shares that about 8 months ago, he was having a conversation with his staff at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. And they were talking about Israel's moral responsibility to provide humanitarian aid in Gaza. A senior staff member raised her hand and she said, Daniel, I'm not proud of it. But right now, I don't have room in my heart to worry about Gazan children. Daniil responded, if you told me you were proud of it, I would fire you. If you are not proud of it, I understand. I understand. If you're not proud of it, it's at least coherent to talk about. In other words, if we understand that we should care for all people, but we struggle to actually do it, talking about it can lead us to a place of healing, a place of hope, a place of more compassion, and even a moment of growth. This year, I've watched as some folks have closed their hearts to Palestinian suffering, denying reports of horrendous conditions, asserting that even children are terrorists, putting up an emotional wall because of the false belief that acknowledging Palestinian suffering might somehow invalidate Jewish and Israeli suffering. And I've watched as other Jews have done quite the opposite. Jews who are so deeply concerned for the harm of Palestinian civilians that they can't recognize Jewish pain as something that stands on its own and doesn't always need to be qualified. I've been struck by this constant push and pull between particularism and universalism, between tribal identity and the identity with it as an assimilated people in the world. And I have come to believe that this is a false dichotomy. On Rosh Hashanah, I spoke about the inheritance of the Jewish people, and I said that the inheritance of the Jewish people is hope, and I really believe that. It is hope. But today, I want to add another inheritance there. I want to assert that in addition to hope, the inheritance of the Jewish people is particularism that demands universalism. I'm going to say that again. Particularism that demands universalism. Identifying with the Jewish people is a key aspect of being Jewish. And the Torah of the Jewish people teaches us that all human life is sacred. It is precisely our commitment to our unique tribal heritage that demands that we open our hearts to those who are different from us. When we experience a dramatic increase in anti-Semitism, such as we have this year, our instinct might reasonably be to put up walls and only allow ourselves to experience Jewish pain, a magnitude of suffering that can truly feel like it is all-consuming. I have felt it. When the world communicates that our well-being is dispensable, when we see things on social media that rattle us to our core, when Zionists are demonized merely because we believe in Israel's right to exist, we might sincerely ask, why should I have any space in my heart for others when nobody cares about me? I get this protective instinct. I have at times this year even felt it myself. But if our love for Jewish people and our love for Israel means that we are silent about human suffering, our Judaism and our Zionism become profoundly compromised. On the other hand, when faced with real concerns about the leadership of Israel or the ways that Israel and the Knesset are conducting things, the inclination of some people might be to stop engaging with Judaism and to stop identifying with Israel in order to create a distance from responsibility and a distance from pain. But I want to suggest that quite the opposite is necessary. We have to dig in. We have to actually care more. Fight to improve Judaism. Fight to improve Israel from a position of strength, from a position of loving and engaged peoplehood. Our hearts, our nation, our people can hold it all. My favorite Mishnah of all times comes from Sanhedrin. And it tells us that God created humanity. And when God did that, God made us all look really different. Not like a coin press, which prints out coins that are always identical to the one that came before. We instead are all different colors, different religions, different ethnicities. Yet the Mishnah says that when we tell our story, we always come back to the fact, the idea, the story, the midrash, that we have one father, Adam, the first human being. And we do this in order to make sure that nobody ever has the potential of saying, my father is better than your father. The Mishnah is telling us that we are all equal. We are all deserving of basic human rights, of healthcare, of a home, of food, something that isn't guaranteed right here in the United States. We are all deserving of human dignity. On Rosh Hashanah, before the shofar was blown by beautiful members of our congregation, I shared a teaching that came from the Talmud. The rabbis say that the sounds of the shofar blasts are meant to reflect the cries of Sisera's mother. Sisera was our enemy. And in the book of Judges, it describes his mother standing at the window of her house and weeping when she realizes that her son was killed in battle. The Talmud is telling us that even our enemies have mothers, and often those mothers are not at fault for their children's behavior, and they too weep. These teachings are in our canon not for times when things are going smoothly, when life is easy. They are here for times exactly like today, when we are faced with our immeasurable Jewish suffering, and when we are witnessing broader human catastrophe as well. I have tried this year to guide our community in harnessing our identities as Jewish people while also living in a world of universalism. Every Shabbat, we have prayed for Israel, for IDF soldiers, for the health and immediate return of our hostages, and we have belted out Achenu in full voice. And we have also prayed for innocent Palestinians. We have also prayed for civilians in Lebanon, and we have prayed for peace. We have prayed for a future when everybody, all of us, can truly honor and see each other's humanity. Our hearts really, really are big enough to hold all of this. This big-hearted care, this universalist approach based on an attachment to Jewish peoplehood impacts not only how we look at our world, how we look at Israel and Gaza, but also how we see our own country. We have a big election coming up, people. And when we look at our ballots, our Jewish identity calls on us to care about all of us, all people in this country, and to decry candidates who rely on rhetoric of hate, of scapegoating, and of lies, candidates who stir up fear of the other in order to grow their own fan base. On any given day, these might include dangerous slurs about immigrants, about trans people, about women, about Muslims, and about us Jews. We have seen this before, and we cannot let this kind of leadership happen again. We are a people called upon to care for all humans, and that must shape how we approach everything, including the ballot box. It is 5785. This year, even when I am weary and overwhelmed by Jewish pain, I will continue to believe in the strength of my heart and in its capacity to hold multiple layers of suffering, sometimes at the same time and sometimes at different times. I invite you to join me in believing in your heart too, as we anchor our moral voice in our Torah and in a particularism that demands universalism, our people's unique inheritance. Gamar Chatima Tova.